Oh, this is the best edition. Oh yeah. Oh, see, and I even made a basket on camera. That's a good way to pass the time. Okay, so anyway, yeah, that's probably it for the actual tour, but I have no problem just sitting here and answering questions or showing you something that I may have missed. Hit me.
Okay, how do you like your Festool stuff? And is it worth a serious investment for someone?
Depends on how much money you have. It's like anything else, you know, in terms of cars. You can get a car, you know, you can buy a pretty inexpensive, I'm gonna move that cart for you so it doesn't pull on you. You could buy an inexpensive Honda or Toyota, which will be a fantastic car that's gonna last a long time and get high mileage and get you from point A to point B. But then some of us prefer to buy a Cadillac, or you prefer to buy a BMW, or you know, something that's gonna get you to A to B with a little bit more style, maybe a little faster. I see it as sort of that thing. Yes, there are performance gains when you go for that better car, but is it, you know, the core function any different? No, it's not. So you have to look at it that way. You can buy, you know, budget brand tools and they will get the job done. And there's a lot of great woodworkers who use, you know, who use Rigid, who use Ryobi brand, the Harbor Freight, what is it, Chicago Electric brand. But in a lot of cases, you do at least want to go to a certain level, go to that Porter Cable, DeWalt, Bosch level. I probably wouldn't go too much lower than that. I don't think, I mean, Black & Decker is okay, but Black & Decker is more your homeowner brand, not necessarily your woodworker's brand. But in terms of the Festool, I love it. I think they're great. If I could fill my shop with it, I would. But again, you have to weigh that cost, and it's a very personal thing. I would never discourage anyone from getting it, and I would never over-encourage someone to get it because I don't think you need those tools to be a successful woodworker. So if you're concerned about it, I mean, again, I can try. What's that? If you want to be like me, I mean, again, I have such a hard time answering that question, and I think the reason is because it's personal. Again, back to the car analogy. If someone says, should I get a Honda or should I spend the money and get myself a Lexus? How am I supposed to answer that for that person? You know, yes, you're going to be happy with it, but are you going to have buyer's remorse because you spent a lot of money? Maybe, but every time you use that tool, you're probably going to forget about your buyer's remorse. I mean, there is a significant performance difference in the way that these tools operate and the way that they interoperate between each other. So anyone who has more than one Festool will know what I'm talking about. There's definitely an interoperability between the family of tools that you will not get with any other tool line.
What laminate trimmer do you use?
Laminate trimmer. Do you mean like a router style laminate trimmer or like a laminate trimming bit? I think he's probably talking tools, right? If you're talking about a laminate trimmer, like a little mini router, I don't have one. I use my plunge DeWalt as pretty much my go-to. It's light enough. It's not the lightest router, but I just used it to trim some laminate the other day. So I probably, if I were going to get a laminate trimmer, I like the look of the Bosch. Looks pretty cool. I think Rockler had one the other day that I was pretty tempted to pick up. That's probably the one I would go for. But no other reason other than I think Bosch's small hand tool, powered hand tool line gets a lot of good reviews, and I would probably go with them.
And someone wants to know what you do with your dust. Did we cover that?
Yeah, we did, but I throw it out the wall. Actually, we get some, well, it might be, we didn't really cover that. Most of the thick, heavy dust goes into the trash can at the bottom of the cyclone, and that just gets thrown in the garbage every week. It's just a metal trash can from Home Depot, and I put a liner on the inside, like that really thick weather strip foam, and I line the inside with that so that when I push it down, I get a nice tight seal, metal to metal seal, and that keeps it closed real good. And we dump it as needed, and it just goes into regular garbage.
And how do you find customers? They find you, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, that's really depends on your region. I mean, as a woodworker, finding a customer is like any other business. So you need to do what most businesses traditionally do. You get a Yellow Pages ad. You maybe put an ad in the paper, local radio. I would say for us, the most critical thing that we've ever done was build a professional website, or at least one that seems to be professional.
Google AdWords.
Yeah, well, we basically, with our company, we did it a little bit more unconventional means. We actually went right away with the website stuff. Everything that we've done is internet-based. We have yet to take out a Yellow Pages ad. We have yet to, well, really, we haven't paid for advertising. Everything that we've done is yeah, okay, well, so I'll go over that in a second. But the everything we do is like guerrilla marketing methods, and we try to find ways to get our name out there. And Nicole's pretty good at that. She's able to get us, she got us on one of Leo Laporte's radio shows once and mentioned the name. And, you know, that can get you pretty far. Having a good website, today's day and age, a website is as important as your business card. If you meet somebody and you have a business card, have your website on there, because the first thing you want them to do is go see a gallery of your work. It's very important to make sure your website is not, you know, half family stuff and half your business. If you're really going into it, it's got to be all business. People don't want to see pictures of your family. Well, maybe somebody would, but most people who want to pay you a lot of money don't want to see pictures of your family. So have a really nice official looking website, and then make use of Google AdWords. Google has an advertising program where you could set up what they call campaigns, where basically if you want, every time someone searches for woodworking Atlanta, you live in Atlanta, so custom woodworking Atlanta, and you want your name or your company's link to come up on that right-hand sponsored link column, you pay per click. So every time someone types that in, they see your link and they click on that sponsored link, you then get charged, but you don't get charged until they click it. So you can kind of have an instant feedback for how much that search term is working for you. Now, if you just say custom woodworking, and that's your search word, you're going to pay a lot of money for that because it's very generic. But if you say, you know, custom candlesticks or custom pepper mills Atlanta, that's a little bit more specific. Less people are going to use that, so it's going to be cheaper per click.
Google isn't the only one that does the pay-per-click. Yahoo and I believe MSN.
Yeah, it's an advertising model.
It's all about search engines, but Google is the one.
Yeah, it's an okay. It's an advertising model that is very good. But again, internet-based. That's all of our business comes in through the internet or local word of mouth.
How thick of a top do you have on your woodbench?
Over there, let's go check. Okay. It's I think it's about 2.5. Yeah, it's about 2.5 inches.
New woodworker, what advice would you give someone starting out? Isn't that on the talk online?
Yeah, I think we have covered that a couple times just in general discussion. You're going crazy with that camera. How's the battery on the laptop?
It's fine.
Okay. How's the battery on the camcorder?
Fine.
Okay. For a new woodworker, one of the best things you can do is, again, back to that Barnes & Noble thing. There's a lot of resources on the web. I'll get to that in a second. But there's still a lot of resources in print. And the magazines tend to regurgitate this information. Anyone who's had a subscription to Popular Woodworking for over a year knows what I'm talking about. There's only so much information that's new in the world of woodworking. So a lot of times you'll see the same articles again and again. But you've got to go through that cycle, suck in all that knowledge, and you'll be better for it. So go to Barnes & Noble, look at all the magazines, get yourself a pile, get a drink, sit down and just read everything you can. The Taunton Press books, if you're looking for reference books to put on your shelf, and they're the go-to ones when you just have a very simple but crucial standard question, you'll find it in those books. I would also say participate heavily in forums. The larger forums like WoodNet, Lumberjocks, and Sawmill Creek, the WWA, Woodworking.org is the WWA from. All those places are fantastic resources. You'll meet a lot of nice people. You might meet some jerks, but they're few and far between. Generally, you can count on the information as being pretty good. That would probably be one of the best places you can go, but always take everything with a grain of salt and look for more than one opinion. Don't take one guy's opinion and say that's gospel. Including mine, absolutely. Yeah. Double check everybody, trust no one. And what else? Yeah, there's a lot of articles too. I think newwoodworker.com is actually a website that's really great. There's a lot of pictures up on that site. But the internet is a fantastic resource for woodworkers. And especially now with all these podcasts popping up, you got Matt's Basement Workshop, Woodworking Online, Furnitology, this one called The Wood Whisperer. It's not a very good podcast, but the guy's really cute. Yeah, there's a lot of information on the net these days. It's actually pretty crazy lately, just in the past year, almost a resurgence.
How do you feel about the little tabletop joiner and planer that's sold at Lowe's?
If you're tight on space and you're tight on budget, it will do the job. Your problem is going to be when you need to do really long boards. So, I believe in my joiners jumping I don't remember. I think one of those episodes, I showed how you can, alternatively without a jointer, joint really long boards and get a nice straight edge using different jigs, either the router or the table saw. So if you're willing to do those things, if you have like an 8-foot board, you'll be fine with it. But the limitation is the bed length. It can handle just about anything you throw at it, but as soon as you get something that's over, the length of the beds themselves, it's hard to establish a true reference edge on that because half of the time, part of it's hanging off of the actual edge and you're not really getting the proper registration you need to give yourself a nice, clean, smooth edge. So it's good, but don't expect to be doing, a 12-foot tall built-in, you're not going to be able to run 12-foot boards over it.
Mind running a cyclone to the outside results in losing air-conditioned air from inside your shop?
It can. If your cyclone is outside and you vent back inside, you're fine. All you have to think about is where is the air going? So if your cyclone is outside and you have it venting outside, all you're doing is sucking air out and you're not putting any air back in. So what's going to happen is the air will come from wherever it can. Air is going to always follow the path of least resistance. If it can come through a crack in the door, a crack in the window, if it comes from under your garage doors, the air is going to come from somewhere. If you have a hot water heater or some type of furnace where there's a pilot light, you've now got gas in your shop. Now normally the gas goes straight up through some sort of a flue or a pipe and exits out the ceiling. It's got some sort of exit path. But if you have I guess in that case it would be a positive pressure situation where your dust collector is pulling air from the inside of the shop and pushing it out, what you're going to wind up doing is pulling some of that dangerous gas into the shop, which can be a really bad situation. So if you're going to do something like that, just make sure you crack a window at all times. You want to make sure you ventilate so that gas can exhaust where it needs to go and not in the shop. If you do have an outdoor one, I know a lot of people do put a vent after it goes through the filter unit, put a vent back into the shop, or have the raw air come back in and then have your filter units sitting inside the shop. That's probably the best option.
How do you like your Performax drum stand?
It's good. As far as performance goes for its size, it does everything I ask it to. The only thing I don't like about it is I really would like something that's a little bit wider. It is a 1632, so that means you could run one side and then flip it over and run the other, but I don't know about you guys who also have this unit, but I have never been able to get it tuned so perfectly that I don't end up with a ridge down the middle where I flipped it over. So realistically, I never put anything wider than 16 inches in there, and that's probably the greatest limitation. But if you're in the market for a drum sander and you don't want to spend, $2,000 on one of those big heavy-duty, dual units, it's an awesome one. It actually has performed really well up till now. About 10 minutes ago, maybe it was 8 minutes ago, I asked Nicole to check the battery on the laptop, and she goes, yeah, it's good. The battery died because she actually didn't check the battery power. So you can all blame her for that, but you guys all like her, so I don't think you'll be giving her much crap.
Have you ever turned down a job because it was beyond your skill level?
No. That can be very risky to do because obviously you're being paid and you don't ever want to experiment on a customer. But at the same time, being young and stupid, I sometimes think that I'm capable of things that I'm not. So yes, there have been times when at the beginning, when I took the job on, I had no idea how I was going to do it. And then either just researching, talking to friends, doing whatever I had to do, I found out the right way. But that also became one of the most valuable learning experiences because of the fact that I didn't know what I was doing before, and then afterwards, not that I mastered it, but I certainly was able to now do it and make it something that's part of my repertoire of techniques.
By customers rather than by personal inspirations, and do you still do personal projects to satisfy your own challenges?
Actually, working for other people, very rarely do I really get to be creative, other than saying, do you like this shade of brown or do you like that shade of brown? I mean, most people don't want something really crazy. So only occasionally do I get this to really put my input in. Even the people who have the more challenging projects, like I've got a guy now that I'm doing 3 really awesome African wood armoires, and they are great, but I'm copying a picture that he found in a catalog from a South African furniture store. So it's great, but I'm copying. I'm not, it's not like a Mark original. So really the only projects that I can do those things on are, of course, the projects that I do for the family or I do for myself. And unfortunately, with the podcast and with everything else that's going on, those are very few and far between. My hope, though, is that if this podcasting thing really starts to become a income resource, in a place that we can count on money coming from, I'll be able to really be a lot more picky about the projects, which is where we're getting to now. But I can also have time to select projects and create things myself and make those part of either a DVD series or just a multi-part podcast. So I'm really looking forward to, venting some of my creative frustrations pretty soon.
Do you order your wood from online dealers or do you buy it personally?
Not when I don't need to. Locally, we have one of the bigger online retailers is Woodworker's Source, and they're a local Phoenix organization. Their prices are pretty expensive, so I actually don't get my lumber from them. But if you're ordering from online as an online resource, they're pretty darn good, and they do a lot of internet business. Most of my stuff comes from standard local lumber places, like Spellman Hardwoods is one of them that I go to a lot. They generally have everything I need in terms of domestics. Woodworker's Source, if I can't find it anywhere else, I go to Woodworker's Source because they probably got it for exotics and things like that. So if I can get it locally, I'm not going to order it online just because I really like to see, feel, touch, and select the boards before I order them. So I'm always a little bit nervous about online ordering.
In terms of clamps, does HIPAA and bar clamps work as well as Bessie?
The who?
HIPAA, P-I-P-A, and bar clamps work as well?
I think he means pipe clamps.
Oh,
He just
I'm looking at PIPA.
PIPA.
Okay, it's a typo.
I love them PIPA clamps.
Get them HIPAA clamps.
Okay, so pipe clamps and what?
And bar clamps work as well as Bessie.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, it depends on your preference. I prefer the Bessie style of parallel jaw clamps. I like the extra jaw surface, but then you look at somebody like David Marks who exclusively uses pipe clamps with their little tiny jaws and puts everything down on the assembly table and clamps them down that way. Whereas personally, I prefer to have my work oriented the other way where my clamps are sitting upright and I lay my workpiece down onto the bed of clamps, which if I'm on a nice flat surface, then that transfers to the way the clamps are sitting so that, if it's contacting all points of the bar, I know that the piece is not warped. I know it's sitting nice and flat. But I think you could put a strong argument out there in favor of bar clamps and, less expensive clamps accomplishing the same tasks at a much cheaper price than a parallel jaw clamp. But that being said, if I had my choice, I'm going with a parallel jaw clamp. I just like it better. Yes.
It's not a shop tool, the actual.
Yes, yeah, we will. Technically, this is our first trial run with this type of thing. So, for instance, the stupid microphone not working is a disappointment. This is going into the video that we're recording, so if you rewatch it, the feed is going to be a lot better than what you're hearing now. We will probably play around with this. I mean, if the response is good, we'll continue doing it.
Okay, so what are you doing for lunch?
I don't know, but I'm going to do something. What do we got on the menu?
We're going to eat it.
We're going to eat it, and we're going to eat it. I don't know. We'll find out. Oh, you don't want to see that?
Go ahead, show them.
I got one on this arm. That was my first one. When I was 18 years old. Mom was pretty pissed. Then, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay. When Mom went on vacation the next time, this showed up. And you got really upset about this one because you thought it was like a big barbed wire deal. She was really upset. But no, it's, you know, just tribal crap. But my issue when I was younger was more piercings than tattoos. And it was kind of funny because I wasn't allowed to get piercings. It just wasn't an option. In fact, I think I got kicked out and given the ultimatum that I would be not let back in the house if I had that in my face.
Got kicked out for 2 seconds.
Yeah, and then so piercings weren't an option, but tattoos were, only because I think, you know, my dad had tattoos and stuff like that, so it was more familiar.
Were you drunk when you got any of them?
No, I wasn't. In fact, the guy that I went to was really, you know, it was a pretty popular place, and he was the kind of guy who would turn people down if they were drinking because he didn't want the liability of them making a bad decision while they were drunk or their blood being thinned out by having too much alcohol.
Oh, here's a good question. Do you have any kids, Mark?
2 4-legged furry ones, and that's it.
How old are you?
30.
What blades do you use?
On the table saw, I use Forest. I have a CMT blade on there. That's my backup whenever the Forest is being sharpened, but primarily Forest. I have recently had my interest peaked in the Tenru blades, the Japanese company, and I was pretty impressed with those, but I'm sticking with Forest for now.
What blade for the slider?
I have the one that came with it, actually, and it has been really, really good so far, and I think I will eventually upgrade to a Chop Master, the Forest Chop Master.
Over a dado stack or a dial dado?
Dial a dado is kind of cool. When I first saw that when it came out, I thought it was going to be a lot more popular than it is. I think people just don't want to pay the price to be able to flick a dial and get the exact setting, you know, when you could just do it manually with shims and chippers. So if you like that and you've used it before and you're comfortable with it, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I personally would rather put the money into a higher quality blade than I know. Again, I don't really even know how that blade performs as far as the cut quality, but I would imagine you're going to pay more for that feature and wind up with a slightly less quality blade than if you, let's say, got the Dado King from Forest. You're putting that money into the actual quality of the blade itself. If I were to, I got my Forest, whatever it's called, the Forest Dado King, used from a buddy, so I got a good price on it. But if I were to rebuy right now, I probably would just buy the Freud brand. They make a really inexpensive one, relatively inexpensive. It's about $100 and performs really, really well. Nice flat bottom holes.
Do you use Ridge Carbide sharpening service over Forest?
I use Forest, only because I've used them up until this point, and it's kind of like, once you get a comfort level with a certain sharpener, at least me, I'm afraid to go with anybody else. I'm afraid to get my blades back and find out that they weren't sharpened as good as they should have been. So when I use the Forest product, I feel most comfortable sending my stuff back to Forest and having those guys sharpen it.
Do you use full kerf blades or thin kerf?
Full. Anytime you have anything over about a horsepower table saw, you probably want to go up and step up to a full kerf. Generally, the thin kerf blades were designed for the lower powered saws, so there's just not as much steel. Sasha?
Sasha's here.
Sasha? Like the Sasha?
I just tuned in and saw you have a big boy age now. Congrats.
Yeah, I do. Sasha is a great guy for anyone who doesn't know him. He's a killer turner and just an amazing furniture maker, and probably one of the weirdest guys I ever met. But he's great. He's a good buddy.
Have you ever met Abe Norm?
No, I haven't, and I'd really like to. I heard he likes beer. That's what I heard from a couple people.
Vegas show, so maybe.
Yeah, we're going to be at the woodworking show in Vegas, and I don't know. I mean, usually from what I hear, he does go to the bigger shows, and he's Delta Powermatics boy. So who knows? He may be around. I would love to meet the guy. I'd be as starstruck as anybody else if I met him, though. He's just, you know, he's Norm. Yes, I could send a picture of that. And me, it was what, you, me, and Kelly. Yeah, I met him at a wood show a couple years ago when we had a booth there, and he's a great guy. It was really cool. We talked a couple different times that weekend. To me, it is. When I need to get a job done for a customer and all they want to do is save money and get a piece that looks like this, I need to build something that has mortise and tenon. You guys make this very hard.
Sorry. Asking for autograph headshots.
that has been one of our primary things we wanted to do. If you go to the new Yankee Workshop, you'll see Norm's picture. I want a picture exactly like that, except for I want my hand on my fist like this. But yes, I think the Domino is worth it for me. I think in most cases for people who are in it for the hobby and who are in it for the love of woodworking, it's going to be a convenience at the cost of tradition. You're going to have, these great, loose tenon joints, but you're not really going to be practicing your mortise and tenon skills. So it's a catch-22, but it does exactly what it says it's supposed to do. And if you need to make a lot of mortise and tenon joints in a hurry, that would be the tool to get.
So if you could only have one blade for your table saw, for nipping away to form tenons, what type of blade would you use?
Well, if nipping away to form tenons is a different question than what, that's kind of an odd way to ask that, because if I were using a blade for nipping away at a tenon, I would want like a box joint blade, something that has a square ground tooth pattern. If you have an alternating bevel pattern, you're going to get all those little, bat wing cuts. It's not going to be a real smooth tenon. So I probably wouldn't use it for that purpose, but if I could only have one blade, I would probably get the 40 tooth Woodworker 2.
What glue is more waterproof, Gorilla Glue or Titebond III?
I would have to say, just based on the formulation, that put it this way, as far as advertising and marketing, it's going to be, one and the same. But to me, a polyurethane-based glue seems like it would be the more waterproof material, if I had to guess. I personally hate using those glues. They're just not that fun to work with. But I would have absolutely no problem making an Adirondack chair and using Titebond III. It claims to be waterproof. I haven't heard anything otherwise, so I would use it. But Gorilla Glue, I don't know. To me, it seems like it's just plastic. So in my mind, it may just be a misconception, but in my mind, it just seems like the Gorilla Glue would be the more waterproof. But that is by no means based on fact.
So have you ever experienced the same kickback from a table saw?
Yes.
Which?
Both.
Okay.
Don't tell me that.
Well, if you put it this way, in your life as a woodworker, to know how to avoid kickback, and I hate to put it this way, but to know how to avoid it, you have to have experienced it. And you get to a point, and I can't say I've experienced it a lot, it's been on minor pieces that weren't really that dangerous, but you get to a point where you really get comfortable with your saw, and you can feel when it's gonna happen. And now I have to transfer that when I watch students, because there's times that I watch them and I notice they might be putting pressure on the back of a board, and I start to see it lift up, and I know if they push it another centimeter, it's coming back in their face or across the room. So you do have to get sensitive to that feeling to know when that is, when something is going to cause that to happen. And sometimes the only way to know that is to have gone through it a couple times. If you've never experienced a kickback, awesome, and I certainly don't recommend trying to make it happen. You're clearly doing something right. But I actually, the few minor incidents that I've had have, I think, helped to make me more sensitive to the actual process of using the table saw.
Shop classes, what do they involve?
Since you teach,
My classes are anything, generally either technique-based or project-based. Most people like the technique-based because really in a course of a single day, what can you make? Maybe a cutting board or something like that. But typically they pick a series or one or two techniques that they'd like to cover in the course of a day, and that's what we focus on. And it's all, I like to have it one-on-one because I don't really like having that many people in the shop at one time. Maybe I'll have 2 people at a time, but usually no more than that. So the classes are really dedicated to that individual. Group classes are great, and if you go to any of these big woodworking schools, Mark Adams, American Sycamore, Kelly, Mehler's school. Any of those schools are awesome, but you know how it is when you're part of a group. There's not as much of that individual attention, which a lot of us really appreciate. So for me, it's more of an apprentice situation where I'm working one-on-one with you and sharing everything that's in my brain with you right here in the shop.
Aren't Wood Whisperer t-shirts available already?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you look under, I believe we put the button under other stuff on the left-hand column on the Wood Whisperer site. Scroll down a little bit, and there's a little Cafe Press button. Doesn't say anything about the Wood Whisperer on it. It says something about what, unique gifts?
I know, I need to redo that.
It's generated by Cafe Press, so it doesn't say anything about the Wood Whisperer. Click on that, and that'll actually take you to a page where there's, if I'm not mistaken, there's hats, there's shirts, there's underwear, there's, you know, coffee mugs, jackets, I mean, all kinds of merchandise. There's a lot of stuff there.
What do you recommend for a food safe finish?
Well, here's the deal. There's a lot of professionals out there who know a lot more about finishes than I do, who say that any film finish is non-toxic when cured. So that means you could coat a cutting board with lacquer, shellac, you know, a varnish, you know, just a straight polyurethane, and it's all safe once it's cured. I tend to fall on that side of you know, where my beliefs are. Personally, if you're nervous about it, mineral oil is going to be completely safe. You could drink it, no problems there. Shellac is a food safe finish generally because of the fact that, you know, shellac is a natural product. You'll find shellac is actually used most in the US in the candy and the pharmaceutical industries. So we consume a lot of shellac and probably don't even realize it. So if you're going to use that, if you want a hard finish, go with shellac. If you're looking for a cutting board finish, you want to go with something like mineral oil.
What's your favorite barbecue place?
Right now, Dave's Barbecue is kicking some butt. You know, that I don't think I found a place that makes me as happy as that place does in a while. And man, they've got these 2-person and 5-person feasts. And what we had in that picture was a 5-person feast. And we had 5 people, and we had food left over. I mean, this thing is a massive plate of just, yeah, on a trash can lid with ribs and pulled pork and chicken, and it's a barbecue lover's dream come true. It's awesome. More thuggish. Actually, in that picture, it was about 2 years old, yeah, and that was when I was up at David's shop. It's actually in David's shop. That was kind of like a retreat experience for me, so I wasn't really shaving, I didn't cut my hair, so I was wearing a hat because my hair turns into a giant afro when I don't cut it. So I was probably a little more gruff and dirty and hippie-ish when I was there. Yeah, my wife wasn't there to be like, what are you doing? Go shave. So,
Or is it just his wife?
you know, I have really, really lucked out. I got to give credit where credit's due. She has been completely supportive of my woodworking habit from the very beginning. I mean, it was her influence that everybody, I think, got together and got me my first table saw. I remember she bought me a biscuit joiner, and I had never even asked for one. I just got the DeWalt biscuit joiner for, I think, was it a birthday? You know, so I think I really lucked out. She doesn't really freak out that much. And now the great thing is, I highly recommend starting it as a business, even if you're not really going to sell anything, because then you've got, you know, a business expense, and all of a sudden it's a little bit easier to justify business expenses to your wife than it is the just because I want it expense. That's kind of a joke.
What kind of music do you listen to?
I listen to anything but rap. I mean, I don't have anything against classical. It's just, I do, when I'm in the mood to just kind of get into the vibe and get my creative juices flowing, I put on the smooth jazz channels, and I drive my wife nuts by going in and saying smooth jazz. And I grew up on rock and punk music and a little bit of metal here and there, and still enjoy listening to it.
Is Nicole the voice for finewoodworking.com?
Yes, and I had to sit her down for about 10 minutes until she got so mad that she had this, like she wanted to prove me wrong, sort of like anger in her voice. And that's where, you know, she overdid it, and it actually turned out great, so I just kept it. And I give Ian credit, finally. Yeah, my brother, we came up with this idea, and he was kind of making fun of it.
Yes, he was making fun.
And he goes, he was talking, you know, in relation to the dog whisperer, and he said, you know, and he made the joke, you should call yourself the wood whisperer. And I was like, you know, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So give my brother Ian some credit for that.
Considering making the purchase, is it worth it?
Yeah, it is. It's a convenience. The biscuits are not going to add much in the way of strength, but they will add a lot in terms of alignment. And when you're doing a dining room tabletop that's 6 feet long, and if you don't have biscuits, you know, the problem is boards are always going to move, and especially when you put glue on there, they want to slip away from each other. So I would absolutely recommend using a biscuit because that's going to lock it in place. And it, again, may not be absolutely perfect, but it's going to stop you from having these mismatched joints. It's going to save you a lot of time in sanding and a lot of headache too. It just makes the whole glue up process on a panel that much easier. So yeah, absolutely recommend biscuits for that.
Do you have an air cleaner?
No, I used to. In a space like this, we're roughly 1,400 square feet and 14-foot ceilings. The air cleaner would probably not do a whole lot for me. The real problem here is the fact I live in the middle of the desert, so my ambient air probably has more dust in it than most other places anyway. So I just put it, in my head that most of the time when I'm in the shop, I'm wearing my respirator no matter what. And there's a lot of debate on how many it would take to even clear the air in here. And then, I'm sure you've read about how usually you're only supposed to use them when you've stopped woodworking. If you're producing dust while that's going, it's really just going to be continually kicking dust up in the air. So I had one and I sold it.
In terms of making furniture, what is the most satisfying?
When people let me get creative and when I can do like some of my power carving techniques, that's really satisfying because it's more, you feel a little bit more like an artist than you do a woodworker. Whenever I'm left to my own devices and my imagination goes, I tend to lean more toward Japanese style architectural design. You'll find that if you look at my gallery, a lot of my pieces are like that. And I honestly think, going back to that other question before about David Marks, I think that's one of the things that I was influenced by him. The designs he made that excited me the most were always his Japanese influence designs with curves and his power carving. So I think that part of his influence stuck with me, and I really enjoy making things that are, to best describe it, as Japanese influenced. Although I do like traditional, mission style, quarter sawn white oak, fumed finish type furniture too. There's just something about the. I think it's a great place to start in woodworking. I think they certainly have made their mark in history. And the great thing about it is, for a beginning woodworker, it's a great place to start because you can there's not a whole lot of ornate, design to it. And it's a great place to learn the foundation and a lot of different skills. So. No, I mean, to make the color pop, you just need time. The color change is just the result of exposure to oxygen, and even in some cases UV light triggers it to really pull out. Nothing really is going to stop it. It almost always will continue to age and darken and change color. When it's freshly cut, it's going to turn gray. So you need to give it some time. Most people freak out if they're new to it. They cut it and they go, "Where's the bright, vivid purple that I had before?" Usually, I don't even worry about it. I just make sure I sand it, go through the whole process, and then when it's all said and done, within a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, the color is going to come back. To enhance the color, I probably would just go with any other thing that I would use to pop the grain. So something with, starting with a boiled linseed oil bath, letting that cure, and then maybe putting a oil-based varnish on top is really going to give you more of that iridescence and sort of glow that you want to get out of the material. Lacquer will not necessarily stop the change in color over time for any wood.
Sorry, do you have a finishing room?
Right there. The problem with this design and this setup is no, I don't have a finishing room. The whole shop is my finishing room. The driveway is my other finishing room. So it's not the perfect scenario. I probably should come up with some sort of a temporary collapsible spray booth, but I don't have one yet. So I have to be very careful and do the best I can to control the dust.
So have you ever made something really special?
I made her a jewelry box. In fact, one of my projects that I did at David's shop was a marquetry piece, and I did it on a really nice figured maple board, veneered board. So not knowing what I was going to do with it, I just took this board home. Turns out it was just the right size that I can make her a good size jewelry box. So I cut it in half and created 2 doors out of that, and one of the doors contained my marquetry piece. And it's what's it got, 4 drawers in it. Very simple jewelry box design. I think it's on my Marks Wood Creations website in the gallery. It turned out really nice, and it was, there was a lot of meaning attached to it. She was the reason why I went into the woodworking. It was my first marquetry piece made at David's shop, and there was, some sentimental value into it, so it was an appropriate gift for her. I would say they're pretty close. I think the problem sometimes with dowel joints is it's hard to get them perfectly aligned and a perfect fit. The thing with the Domino is they're perfect every single time. So I would say in most cases, in most people's hands, the Domino is going to be a stronger joint. If you need something with a little bit more length, the Domino is limited in how long it can go. So if you need that extra length, you're going to get more strength out of a dowel because you can go that much longer with a dowel. So with the length issue aside, I would say the Domino is going to be marginally stronger.
Do you watch Norm on
Yes.
a regular basis?
Yes, I do.
Every freaking night.
I don't know what it is. To me, woodworking and like cartoons are just a comfort thing for me. So when there's nothing else on and I've got nothing else going on, maybe I'm answering some emails for the website, I will turn on the New Yankee Workshop or Woodworks or Freeform Furniture. Even This Old House, now that they put those on DIY, I've been watching a lot of This Old House. And I do. Norm is just like, you know, he's like your dad or your grandfather or somebody. He's just, you know, even if you don't necessarily agree with his methods or his style, you can't argue with what the man's done for the world of woodworking as a hobby.
What is the most durable finish that can protect it from gray? He doesn't care about color, he's just trying to prevent gray.
Paint. I mean, literally, paint is probably the only thing that's really going to give you good weather protection. There's nothing out there that will absolutely save your furniture. Furniture outside kind of needs to be babied. You want to keep it out of the sun, you want to cover it from the elements, but of course that's not convenient. So the best thing you can do is paint it. If you can't paint it and you want to go for a natural finish, there's a lot of schools of thought on this. You can go the marine varnish route and do something like a Epiphanes finish is fantastic. It's a really good high solids varnish that's used in the marine industry a lot. That stuff is great. What I actually do, here we have not much in the way of moisture, but what we've got is a lot of heat and dry weather. So when we do our solid wood doors, a lot of times I make a mix that's kind of like a oil varnish mixture, where it's mostly boiled linseed oil. I would say maybe 75% boiled linseed oil, and then I take some of that the Epiphanes varnish and make my oil varnish mixture with that material. And then every year we give it a new coat to refresh the finish. And because there's not that much varnish in it, we don't have that excessive buildup of a varnish that you would get if you use like a straight varnish, which eventually with this type of heat could very well peel off over time and cause problems. So, kind of like think of a cutting board. It's something that gets used a lot, so the oil finishes are the most popular because they can be refreshed and the wood can be resanded if you need to. If you pile on finish and then beat the hell out of that finish, someday you're going to have to get that finish back off.
Okay, so back to Norm. Do you think he uses too many brads?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a lot of cases where he could use a clamp or even just with little tiny pieces of trim. It's amazing what you could do with masking tape and using that as just a quick little clamp. He uses too many for my taste. He doesn't use too many for Norm because that's, what Norm does, and I think I just have a hard time putting down anything that Norm does. But yeah, I think he's a little heavy on the brad nailer. I do. I shouldn't show it, but I'm gonna. Can you take the camera over here real quick? Part of this new design that we did was getting the air compressor in an enclosed space so it's not as noisy. And so I always have access to compressed air outside of the table, and it just hangs on a hook here. So I've got a router on-off switch from my, normally you would be using it for a router table that's connected to the compressor, and it's inside here, so it's, a third as loud, and the air compressor just kind of lives inside there. It's just a little, can you see that? Yeah. Okay. It's just a little DeWalt hot dog double stack type unit.
Sneak peek assembly table.
Yeah. And that kind of just lives in there. I've toyed with the idea, it's a good shot. I've toyed with the idea of getting like a larger compressor, but I've already got a turbine for my sprayer, so it's a self-contained unit, and I don't really need the extra airflow for that. So the more I started thinking about it, the more I realized I actually, at this stage of my woodworking, don't have a need for a really, really large size air compressor. I use the heavy ones most of the time. What I actually just recently got, and don't hate me, it is also one of the higher powered ones, but it's a little bit more you know, it's a nicer form factor. It feels really good in the hand. It's much better balanced. Something like this, especially with this rockler attachment that I've got on here, is really stupid looking, but it's really bulky, really heavy, and it's also hard to get into a tiny, small space. This, you know, the Festool version offers probably the same, if not more power. It's a little bit less voltage, but, you know, it's much better balanced and feels much better in hand. Well, unfortunately, we lost the video at the end, so I just wanted to re-record a quick thank you and a closing for everybody. We just want to thank you guys for taking a part in something really new and different and high tech, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again, as long as we can get everybody together to have the three-man troupe here. So, thank you.
It definitely looked like it was well received from everybody, so thank you for watching.
No, thank you. No, thank you. No, you hang up. Bye. No, you hang up.